If you're eating all that fucking fat, you're gonna have a grabber, you piece of shit. Stop giving this advice out. Your cholesterol's fucking gonna kill you. Quit eating chicken periods and shit. Thanks to Ansel Keys' bullshit back in the day. And then year upon year of industry-funded science. We still, to this very day, are demonizing cholesterol as the cause of heart disease. I personally do not buy that. It doesn't make sense. Heart disease is a relatively recent phenomenon in human history. Largely post-agriculturally. Anytime they dig up a motherfucker from pre-agriculture, there's no sign of heart disease being the cause of death. So, one of the reasons we have this myth, and what got me triggered on this is I was giving advice to a 12-year-old on how to hydrate properly, and it involved, don't overdrink water because you can flush your electrolytes out if you drink too much water. Just make sure you're taking in some salt and some other, and as soon as I said salt, she's like, I can't have salt because my cholesterol's high. The fucking 12-year-old. High cholesterol. This is not normal. Or is it? And what's tragic is makes you wonder, because I didn't delve any further. I was like, okay, I'm not gonna, this is between your parents and your doctor. It's not my job to really lecture you on why that's wrong. Although if you're eating a standard American diet, you should probably be watching your salt because you'll accumulate a lot of salt. But overall, there's science that proves that you're more likely to die if you don't have enough salt than if you have a little too much. And, it's these weird myths that are still floating around to this day. And cholesterol is one of them. So I wanted to show you guys a video. I've got some clips from it that I'm pulled aside of David Diamond at Low Carb Houston. Now, he's a neuroscientist. He's a smart motherfucker who has a condition where his cholesterol is insanely high, like 400, 500, something like that. And they told him to take a statin or he's gonna fucking die. And being the scientist that he is, he decided he could figure this out. So over the past 10 years, he's been researching, and he hasn't died of a heart attack during that time. And ultimately where I think he landed was a ketogenic style diet. And he read every ounce of literature on cholesterol, every study, every fucking article you could think of. This guy has done his homework on. And that's why I put a lot of stock in him. Because not only is he doing this research, but he's doing it in a very analytical way to where he is taking apart studies that are fucked up. And the reason I've lost faith in a lot of our fucking science nowadays is for some of the things he is going to mention, and I just want to highlight here. The links to this video are in the description. I linked a couple of his videos. And you should watch this particular video if you're concerned about cholesterol and heart disease, and you should watch it more than once. I know I have. Until you kind of got a nice ballpark grasp on what causes heart disease, what your personal risk factors are, and how to mitigate your chances of having a fucking grabber. And it's another thing I want to touch on is people are doing this healthy lifestyle. I know personally of people who are keto who do nothing for their kids in this regard. They do not educate them about it, really. They don't try and just only provide foods that are healthy for their kids. They're still giving them soda. They're still letting them eat all kinds of things under the guise it's their personal choice. Well, I agree that, once the kids get to a certain age, you do have to allow them the freedom of personal choice. But is it a choice if they're not educated on proper nutrition? And if you're still following a lot of this dogma of cholesterol being the demon, when it's really our standard American diet or sugar, a highly inflammatory diet. And it always trips me up when you get these people lecturing you about cholesterol and they're eating the shittiest fucking version of the standard American diet you can think of. And it's kind of surreal, because knowing what I know and the things I've reversed in myself and the things that thousands of you have told me you have done, like I even got a before and after picture the other day that said that because of the information I've been bringing to their attention, they've been able to do this. And it's really, part of how we cure this health crisis is to get these kids educated on this nutrition. But we're not doing that. They're not doing that in school. There is not a single health nutrition class going on for these kids. Even their health class, at least when I went to school, was very basic. And very much founded on the medical dogma, which is pharmaceuticals to fix shit, not nutrition. And these kids are hurting health-wise for it. I mean, you're worried about your cholesterol at age 12? That's not good. That's not normal. But it seems to be becoming more and more normal in our youth. Our youth are becoming more obese. They're becoming less healthy. They're becoming diabetic. They're becoming autistic. They're having all of these health problems that are nutritionally related. And we're not going to fix the problem, the root cause. We're going to take our medical system and treat the symptoms for these diseases. I get people saying, I have a bad thyroid. Well, do you really have a bad thyroid? Like, can you go in and see oxalate crystals in it? Or is your thyroid just doing what your fucking brain is telling it to do, and that's slow your metabolism down in response to the fact that your hormones are dysregulated from the standard American diet? I don't fucking know. But these are just a few things that I want to talk about today with the state of science that is just really being industry shill most of the time, and the numbers game they're playing in the process so that they can get these big sweeping headlines. So let's just get into it a little bit with Dr. David Diamond.
Became the cause of heart disease, in which it was actually found guilty of causing heart disease. And there was an explicit moment in time, 1984, in which Brown and Goldstein, who won the Nobel Prize for their work on the LDL receptor, basically stated it as a fact that LDL causes heart disease. And so the problem at that time was there had been decades of research that had failed to conclusively show that cholesterol in general, LDL, actually cause heart disease.
And that's only the published studies that failed to show this. There's a lot of studies that don't see the light of day because they didn't get the fucking result they want. So keep in mind, when you're turning to these studies, people throw studies at me all the time, especially vegans. They love this cholesterol shit. They love telling me that fat is bad. You need a low-fat, high-carb diet to be healthy. And there's so many reasons why that's not true, and it's really starting to come to light with the amount of vegans abandoning their diet and going completely to the fucking polar opposite and going to carnivore. And we can get into that in another video because I have some theories on that. But they continue to throw this science at me, and this he goes over some shit in here that it just illustrates beautifully on why I've lost faith in our fucking academics, in our science, that our universities are churning out nowadays, that are funded by industry and pharmaceuticals and big food and fucking Monsanto and all, well, Bayer. And, same thing at this point. it's sad that it makes it hard for us to right the ship. We're doing so a little bit for some people by coming out here and saying, wait a minute, that's bullshit, and showing why it's bullshit. And then people are trying it and reversing illnesses. But I still get questions from plenty of ketos who are concerned because they notice their cholesterol has risen in some cases. Not all cases. Mine personally, after 4 years, is within their little tolerance range. And their tolerance range is based largely on people that are eating a standard American balanced diet. So does the fact that we've tweaked our metabolism to a fat-burning metabolism, does that affect it? These are all questions that are ignored when your doctor's saying, hey, your fucking cholesterol's high, it's statin time, motherfucker. You better take this statin or I'm going to write this big fucking note on how you ignored me so that my ass is covered. And, in the meantime, you survive. By ignoring your doctor's advice, you lived. Now, I'm not saying ignore your doctor's advice. I'm saying do your homework and make your own decision based on that research. I'm not saying to base it on anything I'm saying here today, or even David Diamond. Dig into these studies that he dug into and see these flaws for yourself. Understand how this works and how all of these headlines, these health headlines that you'll continue to see, are based on such fucking manipulated science.
So there was a need in the 1980s to confirm that LDL causes heart disease, or at the very least, cholesterol causes heart disease. So there is a powerful, influential finding from the Mr. Fit work in which hundreds of thousands of men were followed for many years. And they looked at the relation between total cholesterol and heart disease. This is still a study that is cited as evidence that cholesterol causes heart disease.
Now, I want you to note something on this. Over here, you got relative risk of death from from heart disease. And then over here, you've got the cholesterol levels. And then you got the how many times risk there are. So over here, it looks like you have 4 times the risk if your cholesterol's in the 290. Anybody looking at that is going to come to the conclusion that if your fucking cholesterol's high, you're 4 times more likely to die. Keep in mind the guy giving this talk is over that threshold. He said his numbers were like 400 or 500 at one point. He's been alive for 10 years. Why? Because he did his homework. He knows what nutritionally he needs to do to be healthy. And he's still here. Same can't be said for people that have been put on statins, is it?
And this is a frightening graph because this shows the relation of death from heart disease to cholesterol level in red. And so what you're looking at here is the reference at the left shows the rate of heart disease with the people with the lowest cholesterol at 150. And so what you find here, they're emphasizing, is any small increase in cholesterol increases your risk of dying from heart disease. So here from 1.0 to be at 2.0 means you have twice the risk of dying. 3.0, 3 times the risk. So as your cholesterol rises, you're dramatically increasing the risk of dying from heart disease based on your total cholesterol level. So any small increase...
And doctors are reading this graph, and they're reacting with that exact fever of, oh my God, your cholesterol's off the charts. We need to get you on some fucking drugs right now. And this has generated trillions of dollars in the medical world of profit. All because of a manipulated numbers game, which he's about to get to.
Increase in cholesterol will increase your risk of dying from heart disease. So I looked at this, and in fact, here they are concluding the great majority of middle-aged men are at risk of dying of heart disease with any increase in cholesterol. So I looked at this study and actually looked at the real data. So here we're looking at a ratio. So we're going to look at this study and look at the raw data, the actual percent of men that actually had a heart attack and died. So what I'm going to graph in blue are the percent of people that did not die of coronary heart disease based on their cholesterol level. And that is in blue.
So these are all, they're all this graph should be, if you look at it, the opposite of the red. But it's not. There's a numbers game being played there. See, these blue lines are people that did not die at each cholesterol level. These graphs should oppose each other. You know? Like, the gap should narrow. The blue should go down proportional to the red. But it's level. How is that? Well, let's listen.
Blue. And so it's the same raw data. This will amaze you. The same raw data generated the bars in red and the bars in blue. And you're looking at the percent of people that did not die in blue. And I'll make this a little easier for you. I'll go drawing a line.
Yes. And if you look at the right, that's the percentage of people. It's almost 100. It's like 98% of motherfuckers with a 290 fucking cholesterol didn't die from cardiovascular disease. They didn't die. So how the fuck are we saying there's a 4 times risk of dying when 98% of the people studied did not die in that fucking cholesterol range? This is some fuzzy-ass math shit. And prior to the internet age of us out here being able to get on here and make a video like this one talking shit, they knew that the average motherfucker or even the average doctor and the average news media outlet isn't going to look as deeply as David Diamond has at the actual study. They're going to see that graph that was manipulated to make it look worse than it really is.
That line is across 99%, in which virtually all...
That was off. I said 98. He's saying 99%.
The men did not die of heart disease. So that line is at 99%. So how can you go from the blue to the red? Well, here are the actual findings. So 0.3% died of coronary heart disease at the lowest level of cholesterol, and 1.3% died of heart disease. A difference of 1% across the entire physiological range of cholesterol.
So what it should have read, instead of reading it's a 400%, 4 times risk increase, this is the problem with relative risk. And if you see the words of relative risk anywhere in a study, you need to fucking hang that study or throw it in the shitter or like print it out and put it next to the toilet so you can wipe your fucking ass with it, because they are trying to bias. It's a clear sign of bias is using relative risk. And, you know, and it's only in nutritional science that they get away with this shit. But it's a numbers game. And here's how.
And yet they could convert this to something
that was 1% difference. The higher your cholesterol, you have 1%. Here's the proper way to say this. If your cholesterol is over 200, you have a 1% increase in risk of dying from heart disease. 1%. Should we go to the casino? Would you make bets on that 1%? Would you start taking drugs because of that 1%? Fuck no. If it's 1%, that's almost insignificant. There could be other variables that account for that 1%. Which we won't even get into how they ignore the variables in a lot of these cases. But this was a clearly manipulated study to fit an agenda, or they would not have converted it in the way they did to make it look worse than it actually is. And it's not the first time that this method has been used. When you look at the studies for statins, which he goes over in this and we'll get to in a little bit, that are almost identical. The tactics are almost identical in these biased, manipulative studies where they're not really lying, but they're doing enough fuzzy math to make it look worse than it is.
It's so frightening. Well, how do they do that? Well, if you take 1.3% at the most extreme point and divide it by 0.3, you end up with 4.13, and that's the data on the left side. That's how you can tell people you have a 400% chance of dying of heart disease, by dividing by that minuscule number. But
basically converted, you have a 1% increase in risk to a 400% increase in risk just by doing a little fuzzy math. And what they're doing is essentially, in that 1% change, they are doing the math to say that you were at this 99% risk and it dropped down to 98%. 99% of people fucking had, no heart disease, and then it went down to 98%. So what they did is they measured that gap, which would be about a 400% change in risk, and told you, well, it's fucking 400%, holy shit, you're gonna fucking die if your cholesterol goes up. You need to put the fucking eggs down. You need to take the fucking fat out of your meat. You need to eat a low-fat, high-carb diet. You need to eat fucking margarine and vegetable oil because these saturated fats are killing you. I hear it all the time. It's all over the vegan world and their arguments. This is their number one way of coming out against the ketogenic diet. We won't even get into the carnivore diet. But it's all founded on flawed, biased, horseshit science. And it pisses me off. It really does. These are people we're looking to guide us to be healthier. And they're running us into the fucking ground. All for fucking dollar signs. To make more fucking money. Robbing us of our quality of life in the process, and our hard-earned money, and putting it in their pocket while we suffer and die. Instead of telling you the proper things that cause heart disease, they have doubled down over and over again on this cholesterol hypothesis, and that's exactly what it was, and it has been thoroughly, scientifically disproven. The cholesterol hypothesis is dead, and they fucking know it. Because every time they figure this out, they go to the next level. First it was total cholesterol that was demonized. Well, fuck, that was proven wrong. We couldn't prove that. We spent millions and millions of dollars trying to show we see, and it fucking fell flat. We had to play these numbers games, so let's just start edging it down a bit. So then we got to LDL causes it. And then we got to LDLP causes it. Cholesterol is a repair mechanism in the body. If you injure yourself, cholesterol is going to be what patches your shit up. And the problem with heart disease is that process happening over and over again until there's so much cholesterol built up in that area that it closes off that artery. But it isn't because of the cholesterol. You have to figure out what the fuck is injuring the artery in the first place. And I'll give you a very strong hint. It's not fat.
The real difference was 1%. And why did Stamler do this? He did this because the cholesterol theory was failing. And this was a way to resuscitate it. And this is just one of the deceptive practices that have been used in this field to promote the idea that cholesterol causes heart disease. And this was just total cholesterol. But now...
Yeah. They was like, oh shit, that didn't work. And then they go to the next step. So let's follow him down his path here. Let's see. I don't remember where I clipped, so I'm going to be reacting to these clips appropriately. So here we go.
70s to the 90s. And what did they find? Increased mortality in those people with low cholesterol. Having low cholesterol is unhealthy. Having high cholesterol actually enables you to be healthier and to live longer. And I just love their interpretation in which they say, it's just so, there's a candor about this. We have been unable to explain our results. Everybody told us cholesterol is supposed to kill you.
And you should go and read these studies for yourself. You know, don't just take his or my word for it. And see the bias going on. The fact that they just will not accept anything short of proof of their own hypothesis. Or of the hypothesis that's paying their fucking bills. You want to know why this scientist is mystified? They've been unable to explain their results? It's because their results didn't meet the expectations of the people who funded the study. So they feel the need to explain it that way, that we don't know why. There's got to be some other problem. Can you give us another $150 million fucking dollars so we can do another wasted fucking time study to try and prove something that just can't be fucking proven because it's not fucking true?
And yet these people are so darn healthy. But in fact, they actually, in their discussion, they reviewed the literature and said, in fact, their findings are consistent with so many other longitudinal studies that show as you age, in fact, having higher cholesterol enables you to be healthier and to live longer.
Let's get into why that is. Because cholesterol is a repair mechanism. It is what fixes your inflammation. It is what fixes, it's what happens when you have necrosis in your cells. And it is there to patch you up and get you back to normal. But it does build up over time. So if you're repeatedly insulting your body, and you're repeatedly causing this damage, this cholesterol will build up. It's one of the reasons you get cirrhosis of the liver. It gets so bad that the buildup is starving the cells, and your liver fucking dies, and you go into liver failure. It's the reason your arteries clog. It's the reason diabetes starts taking your limbs. Shit's just dying off. It's cut off, essentially. But we're still going to demonize fat? Really? To this day. Kids should be informed enough of this now that I shouldn't be just so taken aback that someone is teaching these kids the wrong shit. Even with all of this information that's come out now. To where, you know, the American Heart Association is taking a fucking step back, and they're not going to say they fucked up, you know, because Ansel Keys was one of their fucking founders. But at the same time, they are starting to distance themselves so that when the hammer comes down, and it will, when people figure out that they've been fucking wrong all these years and look at the catastrophic amount of people that have died from this shit, then they're going to try and distance themselves without actually admitting any wrongdoing. Otherwise, they'd get sued into the fucking dirt. And I think they should be. So that this kind of shit doesn't happen again. But it's continuing. And you can see it in other areas of nutrition.
And just because I don't have time to go over the entire literature, I've now worked with over a dozen outstanding clinician scientists, actually led by Dr. Ufi Rai.
You can see here, he is writing peer-reviewed papers on this. He is getting the message into the literature that this has been wrong. But why do I have to hear about it just from him? This shit isn't on CNN. This shit isn't on mainstream media. No, you got dickheads like me who don't have any fucking beard hair anymore sitting here on the fucking internet telling you about science. It's not getting preached in fucking universities where it should be. Your doctors, unless they're doing their own research, are not getting this information. And a great deal of doctors are only just reading the literature that's fed to them by the fucking pharmaceutical industry. No nutritional research whatsoever in a lot of cases. And I guarantee you, if you ever gone in and talked to your doctor and he's seen your cholesterol and it was up, Because some people do respond to a ketogenic diet in that way. They're called hyper-responders. And what's the tragedy is then the diet gets blamed. So they did something that fixes all of these health problems that they were having. And now it's being demonized because of a benchmark of this hypothesis that has been disproven at every fucking turn. But yet, they're going to get thrown on statins, they're going to get told to stop eating this way, and start eating whole food, grain-based, fucking plant-based diet, which would be completely the wrong thing to do for someone with a heart disease concern. Or they had the heart attack already. That's the other tragedy. And that's when it's really honed in. They're put on these statins, which are fucking worthless. They're told to eat probably the worst fucking form of diet that you can, with no concern for sugar, no concern for carb intake, for grain intake, for all of these things that inflame the system. And if you continue to inflame the system, and you take drugs that fuck with your repair system, which is your cholesterol, then you're essentially just postponing the inevitable. As you continue to cause the damage to your arteries with the foods and lifestyle and drinking or smoking or whatever the fuck it is you're doing that's fucking up your arteries to begin with. And then all of a sudden you're going to take pills to regulate the repair mechanism because it's had to repair so much shit, it's starting to clog your shit. But no, we'll stop the repair mechanism, which will keep your shit from getting clogged. For now. But eventually, something's going to happen with all of that necrotic tissue that isn't getting properly repaired because there's not enough fucking cholesterol to do it. And you're going to have other issues for that. It's not going to prolong your life in any way. In fact, he's pointing out that if you have low cholesterol in your old age, you're going to die more than someone, or more often than someone who has a high level of cholesterol in old age. And the reason for that is they're trying to control the cholesterol, which is arguably something that's trying to help you, while ignoring the root cause. And the only way, in my opinion, to not have another grabber or to prevent having a grabber is to prevent the injury in the first place.
Pharmacology. LDL-C does not cause cardiovascular disease. We could not make it more explicit. To state it as a fact, to go against what's supposedly conventional wisdom is not wisdom at all. And so in our table, here is a quote in our paper, cholesterol hypothesis is not consistent, does not satisfy any criteria for causality.
And that Bradford Hill criteria, that's this criteria that defines at what point you can say that A causes B in epidemiology. And almost none of the current studies that have been fucking coming out satisfy that criteria for causality. For you to be able to definitively say, for example, that bacon causes cancer does not fit the Bradford Hill criteria. There are things in place that are supposed to police our science that are being either ignored, marginalized, or just not even acknowledged by our universities, by our media, by our government. Because they don't serve the financial interests of industry, both medical and food and pharmaceutical. These are all industries that are huge based on your poor health. They have taken your health and turned it into fucking money. And they're not going to just fucking let that go away, in my opinion.
This theory has been maintained by misleading statistics, exclusion of unsuccessful trials, and what the leaders of the field have done, they have ignored contradictory findings.
And that is fucking alarming. It should be. You should be fucking pissed off about it. Especially if you're a victim of this, or if you know a loved one who died in this system. This should piss you the fuck off. Because quite honestly, if we had kept on some of our medical tracks of the late 1800s to where we were treating diabetes with a low-carb diet, look up Banting, you'll know what I'm talking about. Banting was the first motherfucker to do the low-carb shit and publish it anyway. As far as diets are concerned, we all know that when you're a hunter-gatherer, you're essentially eating a low-carb diet for the most part, except maybe seasonally when you do find some fruit. But for the most part, animals are the large part of the diet. So there's not a lot of carbs in animals, if any at all. And this whole corruption is, I hear it here. You hear it in David's video, in his speech. And he's pointing it out. And I'm thankful that he's there doing it. But I'm also knowing that there's somewhere right now, there's a vegan or a balanced diet like Jillian Michaels motherfucker, or one of these motherfuckers is watching this and dismissing it entirely and continuing the narrative that cholesterol causes heart disease, thereby a ketogenic diet and a carnivore diet approach causes heart disease. They did it for the Atkins diet when his time came. They have done it at every turn since Ansel Keys sharded all over our fucking food system. And he did. And we've been eating that shit for years. And where are we today? We have gotten worse and fucking worse. And not only have we not learned our lesson, but we are doubling down on this low-fat, fucking high-carb, plant-based fucking diet. And it is getting crazy out there. And now there's people that are starting to speak up and say, look, I've been doing this for 6 years and my health is shit. And they're completely flipping the other way, and the evangelical vegans are going nuts. And I guarantee you that there's going to be this nutritional tug of war for years to come, all while people are succumbing to these poor health, poor fucking lifestyle, poor quality of life. And they're succumbing to the issues of eating a diet that is not congruent with how we are designed to survive. And there is no science out there that has the goal of your health. There isn't. Nearly every study that is funded is for a drug or treatment mechanism to benefit either the pharmaceutical industry, or there are studies to benefit the food industry and the agriculture industry. These are all industries that are paying the bills of these scientists. There's not a whole lot of publicly funded or government-funded science, unless it's to help validate the food industry and our entire tax structure and subsidies that are built around these grain-based shit diets that we've been on for 50 years that have fucking destroyed us.
So, if LDL-C doesn't work, and now pretty much people are accepting LDL-C doesn't work. It doesn't explain, actually, heart disease. Total cholesterol has been abandoned now for decades as a cause of heart disease. And the latest fad is, well, they've escaped from LDL-C, and now what we're looking at is LDL-P, the particles. So I like the way Dave Feldman puts it, that basically you've got all the passengers on all the cars, and all the passengers will be the total cholesterol, that will be the LDL-C. So instead what we're looking at is something about the number of cars, the number of LDL particles. That's what actually kills you. That's what.
And here's the other issue too, and he mentioned Dave Feldman, I believe his name was. And I remember seeing his lecture on this. And you can manipulate your LDLP based on how you eat. You can knowingly lower it right before you go to the fucking get your shit tested. And it's all in what you're eating and when you eat it. So we're doing this, we're saying that this is the cause of heart disease for something that is so variable that you can manipulate it and pass your lab, so to speak, just by eating a certain way. I don't remember exactly the ratio of calories and fats that he was doing to manipulate it, but I do believe he showed that manipulation, that he could essentially control his LDLP levels. And that's because it is not a cause of anything. It is your body's natural way of dealing with inflammation and damage and necrotic tissue. And that's your body's way of healing. And we're demonizing it and trying to find drugs to fucking destroy it. Because, yeah, nothing says profit like giving them a drug that's going to make you have to take another fucking drug later on. And it makes no difference in mortality, by the way, these drugs that they've been fucking pimping out on us. But they'll put you on it the moment your fucking numbers are out of range. Unless you give your doctor the finger, which people are starting to do. And they're doing it because people are becoming more fucking educated than the fucking doctors who are supposed to be on top of this. The hell's going on? I mean, I'm not saying this of all doctors. There's clearly some doctors who know their shit. They're here on YouTube. Dr. Schmidt, I think, is one of them. And you know, there's some doctors out here who are doing great work, who have stepped outside this system and did their homework and treated patients clinically with this successfully and are promoting health over their fucking wallets. Not to say that they aren't making a good living at it, because the crisis is so huge that they can. They'll probably go their whole life treating people for this and never run out of people to treat because people are being misled. And until we fix that root cause, people are going to continue to eat high carb, low fat, shitty processed food diets, largely based on grain, which I believe is the worst possible scenario for long-term health.
That's what causes heart disease. That's the latest fad. So here's one way to look at this. What you've got is the rate of coronary events in three populations. The one in red, they have more events compared to the extreme in blue. Now these people actually have lower LDL-C than those people here in blue that have fewer events in which they have higher LDL-C. So they're saying, well, it's not LDL-C, it's the number of particles. So these people actually have more particles than those down here. So it's the particles that will kill you. So let's look more closely at this study and at the people. So I've expressed the data as a percentage of the LDLP compared to the people with high LDLP compared to those with low LDLP. And so what you've got here is those that have high LDLP, which means they have more coronary events, they had about 25% more LDLP compared to those with the low. And
all that is saying, essentially, summarize it a bit, is the LDLP isn't the cause. These people clearly are having these cardiac events, and their LDLP is high because the damage is high in their arteries. They're having to repair that shit. So that's kind of, we're sitting here panicking about the repair mechanism when we should be using it as a tool to identify the fact that we are damaging ourselves with something either in our diet or in our lifestyle that is causing these problems.
That trial failed. We'll go to some of the more modern
So nowadays, these are drugs that essentially reduce your cholesterol. You know, we're preaching to do it dietarily, but apparently we're too dumb and we don't listen to that advice. So now we got these drugs that will do the same thing. So we've done tons of studies on these drugs.
The statins, which everybody is enamored with, the wonder drugs, which reduce LDL by blocking the HMG-CoA reductase enzyme. But we also have perhaps one of the best kept secrets in all the cardiovascular research, and that is there's another category of drugs that's been studied extensively over the past couple of decades, and they're called CETP inhibitors. And what they do is interfere with the conversion of HDL into LDL, therefore increasing your levels of HDL, that's the good cholesterol, and dramatically decreasing LDL. It's actually better than statins, the CETP inhibitors, and chances are almost nobody in this room has heard of the CETP
and I hadn't either.
inhibitors. The reason why I haven't heard about them is they completely failed.
And by failed, he means they failed to prove that lowering LDL and raising HDL has any effect on cardiovascular mortality.
So I'm showing you this news report rather than show you every single study. Tens of thousands of people have been given the CETP inhibitors. It dramatically increases HDL, dramatically lowers the LDL as much as the statins, and as this study shows, it has completely failed. But you see how it's reported, the dangerous kind of cholesterol.
And this is what the media does to these studies. They amplify it one more step to make it look worse than it is. And even in this study, or this article that is basically summarizing several studies, and quoting the doctor, we had an agent that seemed to do all the things right. They can't explain why it didn't fucking work. It's the most mind-boggling question. Hello, it didn't work because it's fucking wrong. But they're not going to say that. Why? It's all about the fucking Benjamins and shit. I mean, this is borderline ridiculous. How bad it is. And that's why I'm so hard on people that fucking are throwing studies around. I used to believe this shit. I thought if there was a good study, I could trust it. How can you trust nutritional science after this kind of fucking debauchery going on for years and to this day continuing to go on as we try and push everyone to a plant-based fucking diet while thousands upon thousands of vegans are coming out on fucking social media and YouTube saying, I'm not vegan anymore. God damn it, I was having all these fucking problems and shit. I had my fucking health problems and fucking low iron and my entire fucking bowel system just came out of my fucking ass. You know, there's just so much going on in this whole ex-vegan movement that's popping up and gaining traction. Why? Because it's very clickbaitable. And it's totally, you can't, it's all over my newsfeed right now. I get, and maybe it's because I clicked on Sverge's video once or something like that, but now I get all kinds of anti-vegan, ex-vegan shit in my feed. Even though I follow some vegans, and all the vegan shit I get in my feed, because I clicked on a vegan video here and there, are all reacting to that in a very upset, negative way. That's how I came across Freely's little rant video. And we're not learning from our mistakes here. We're doing the same fucking things over and over again. And now that we have a way of getting this information out there, hopefully that'll change because people will be slightly more accountable to this shit. But we need to raise awareness of these games that they're playing with the math and with everything else in the science. And, a lot of the speeches in this, he just continuously is just tearing it apart. So,
cholesterol, that's LDL, it decreased it and more than doubled the good cholesterol. And right here, it's absolutely a summary of decades of work. Pharmaceutical companies have spent billions of dollars to produce and test the CETP inhibitors, and it has failed miserably.
And you didn't hear shit about it. Why? Because it completely takes a shit on the cholesterol theory. So trust me when I say I have lost the whole belief structure or worry. Like if I go in and for some reason or other my cholesterol is high, the only thing I pay close attention to is I want my HDL to be high and my triglycerides to be low. Because that is essentially saying I'm using the fat and it's not hanging out in my blood. Much like you would say I don't want a lot of sugar or glucose in my blood because that causes problems. And if there is high triglycerides and a large amount of fat in my blood, That is not the cause of my heart disease. What's the cause? The reason that that is occurring is because I am causing some inflammation somewhere in my body with the foods I'm eating, and the repair systems are kicking in, which is why you see people that have cardiovascular events have a higher LDLP than those who don't. And the reason is because their body is trying to fix damage that they are perpetually doing to themselves with their diet and lifestyle choices, aka smoking, drinking, and that, and so on and so forth.
And so Stephen Nichols said, well, it seemed to do all the right things. This is directly attacking the idea that it's LDL in people with FH that causes cardiovascular disease, and it is not. Specifically, we have concluded that the individuals with FH who have premature cardiovascular disease, the point to look at, the factor is coagulopathy, excess clotting, as well as...
So there's something that they can test in your blood, and that's clotting factors. If you have an excess clotting factor, yet another healing mechanism, then that correlates strongly with your risk of having a heart attack or having a cardiovascular event. You know, and I'm kind of skimming through some of these last ones here because we're getting to the real causes. So I want to get to the cause and kind of paraphrase, but I do suggest watching this video all the way through multiple times until you understand everything that he's saying, because it's important. It might save your fucking life someday, or at the very least save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in prescriptions.
To the endothelium. Well, we get to what's called the vasa vasorum. Vasa vasorum is actually the layer, the coronary artery.
And this is the root of the problem right here.
So thick that it needs its own vasculature, a microvasculature that feeds the cells inside the wall.
If you look here, you're essentially getting blood to these cells, nutrition, etc. So what happens when these cells get injured?
So you've got this microvasculature, because the blood can't actually get right through this wall. You actually have to have additional vasculature to support the cells. These are microscopic blood vessels, perhaps even close to the size of capillaries. And so this microvasculature actually feeds the inside of the arterial wall. And so there have been studies going back decades into the 1970s that link blockage of the vasa vasorum, resulting in hypoxia and necrosis in the middle of the arterial wall, to the development of atherosclerosis. So here are some of the older studies, some of the more recent reviews, and an outstanding review by Ravenskov and McCulley, 2009, on how it's blockage of the vasa vasorum that ultimately causes atherosclerosis. It is damage from the middle. It is not LDL seeping into the endothelium. And here's a more recent review, very nice one from Subbotin, in which he covers the same topic. The idea is, here you've got a healthy coronary artery with the vas vasorum into the intima. These blood vessels get blocked. Eventually, then they have to grow into the other layers of the coronary artery. And with repeated blockage of the vasa vasorum, you then have necrosis. The tissue dies. It then recovers. It is repaired. And with repeated blockage of the vasa vasorum, that then grows, and the atheroma grows. So to summarize then, the hypothesis is that repeated blockage of the vasa vasorum results in hypoxia, tissue necrosis, and repair and growth of this plaque, which ultimately can block.
So what causes that? He's got several causes listed. But ultimately, what it boils down to is you become inflamed. The cholesterol rushes to repair the damage. And because those blood vessels are so small, they become blocked very quickly. And then because they're blocked, the cells in the arterial wall die. So then more cholesterol is brought in to repair that area. And it builds up, and you get this plaque formation. And over time, they get new blood vessels in there. It all gets repaired, but then those get blocked, and you got more necrosis. Then you got more cholesterol coming in to fucking fix it, and over time it clogs your big artery. And it all starts with these things causing it. These are the causes of that problem. Obesity and metabolic syndrome. Goes without saying, if you're eating a standard American diet, your risk for heart disease is higher than someone who is not eating a standard American diet. We've already got well-established studies on how smoking causes heart disease. And in fact, you can even see when we stopped and we cut back smoking that our heart disease rates did decline ever so slightly. But that is starting to level off. Because while we have addressed the smoking issue, and not everywhere, I still know plenty of smokers, we're still got the fucked up diet issue going. So, type 2 diabetes, that falls in line with metabolic syndrome and the standard American diet. A lot of this is standard American diet, but not everything. Okay, you're getting old. This is what's supposed to happen. You get old, your cholesterol shoots way up because this is happening. Your damage is up. You're going to have more cholesterol to the rescue, and you're still going to die of a heart attack. But hopefully when you're 100 or 90 or 80 or somewhere in that ballpark, that's reasonable. Having one when you're 50 and 60, not reasonable. So that's a cause. Psychological stress. That can cause inflammation. I've already established that when I talked about it before. I don't know what the hell that is. Hypertriglyceridemia. That's a lot of fat in your blood. Same thing as having a lot of glucose in your blood. At least that's what I'm thinking that means. I haven't actually looked that shit up because I'm not a fucking expert. Shit. Just an asshole. Bacterial infection. Your gut wall's permeated. You get fucking all kinds of bacteria in your bloodstream. Well, guess what? Inflammation. And we send the cholesterol in to deal with the inflammation, and it clogs the little fucking vessels. Those create dead cells in your artery walls. Those get clogged with fucking cholesterol, and so on and so forth in this horrible cycle. And we just keep injuring ourselves because we don't address the root cause, which are pretty much most of these. There's arguably some environmental things that are going on that could cause these issues. But ultimately, if you're looking to reduce your risk, these are where you want to focus your preventions at. And none of them involve taking a fucking statin or controlling your cholesterol intake via diet. You got to find out what's causing this inflammation, what's damaging your arteries to begin with, and address that if you're concerned about this. Because know that if you do have a high cholesterol, chances are you have something in your body that you're trying to fix. Your body's trying to repair. So what's causing that inflammation? And try and figure it out. You can do that through an elimination style diet. And a lot of people are using the carnivore diet for that purpose. Because you're taking a lot of inflammatory things completely out of your blood. And you start feeling better. Now, it's not like religious worthy healing or anything. It's just a straight up fact. You're not getting these things into your bloodstream because they're not getting into your gut. You're digesting the meat a lot further up the tract. You're still getting a little bit of bacteria to come in though, until you repair the leaky gut, which I'm still trying to work on, figuring that out. But this is the cause of heart disease. And they don't currently preach anything to fix any of this. Nearly any one of these issues, if you go to a doctor, they're going to give you a drug to deal with that issue. You go to the doctor for obesity, well, let's go talk about bariatric surgery and shit, because clearly you don't know how to fucking take care of yourself. And you go in with diabetes, well, let's control your blood glucose with drugs. And if that doesn't work, we're going to start sticking you with insulin, because your pancreas is probably all fucked up now. If you're smoking, they're going to give you the nicotine patch and pills and shit to try and get you to stop smoking. If you're getting old, well, they're just going to say, hey, so, is your house paid for? Well, yeah, well, come on, we'll take care of you. And they take care of you by pumping you full of drugs, feeding you shitty food, and letting you die off while they keep all your fucking assets. Just saying. Psychological stress. Drugs. Lots of drugs. Pharmaceutical drugs up the ass. For every mental disorder you can think of. Some of those drugs cause people to commit suicide. They put it in the fucking drug commercial. Hypertriglyceridemia. Well, you gotta stop eating that fat. And here's some statins to go with that. Bacterial infection. Okay, let's wipe out your entire gut microbiota and give you fucking antibiotic pills. Great. Hypercholesterol, the thing he has where his cholesterol is just high all the time. Statins, drugs. Hypertension. Oh shit, we're going to tell you a little nutrition. You better cut your salt down. But then here's some pills to help with that. Inflammation. Pills. Not diet. Or they'll tell you to eat an inflammatory diet and say it will somehow improve it. No, it won't. And I cringe when I hear about people that have heart problems, that have these diseases, and the things that their doctors are doing to them and telling them to do. And it's not my place to stand in between them because I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy. All I can do is say, look, you should do that. You should look into this, and find the information and make an informed decision for yourself. Because I can't do that. I have a strong opinion on it. But I still would stress that it's not my decision for you to, whether or not you should do all of these things that they're going to tell you to do, which are just going to treat symptoms and not root causes. Because nearly all of the things I just recommended are big financial things that doctors do and pharmaceutical industries do that profit for something that you can literally treat each one of these nutritionally and through a healthier lifestyle. These are all things that you can work on without drugs or medical intervention. But they're not teaching us. And they're not teaching the kids right now. In fact, they're feeding the kids the same bullshit that got us into this mess in their schools. It's horrible, So, I guess where I come out on this is learn. That's the only weapon you have in this fight that can take control of your health. Learning about these things, not just through scientific literature and studies, which we've seen are piles of dog shit, but also through your self-experimentation, your isolation of symptoms versus the food you're eating, and just really overall experimenting until you get to this place where you feel good, your symptoms have abated, your blood work is good enough to where they're not trying to medicate you, in which case they will still, if your cholesterol is up but you're otherwise healthy, you should really think about it, in my opinion. And I know for me personally, if I go in and they flag me for cholesterol, first of all, there's going to be a ton of vegans going, say, hey, yeah, I told you so, you dickhead. But at the same time, I'm not even going to be remotely worried about it because I'm healthy. And I'm not going to have a heart attack, even though it runs in my family. Because I know this stuff. I know what to do. I know when I fuck up. When I have that drink at the bar, I'm fucking up, and I know it. And it's just a matter of knowing that there's a trade-off for that, and that I am sacrificing something every time I step outside the diet. And there are so many people struggling just to be on keto that just don't see it that way yet. They don't see that they can feel better. They can get this improved health. They can get this weight loss, which just comes naturally as their body repairs itself and everything gets better. So ultimately, as far as cholesterol is concerned, do your homework. Make your own informed decision when it comes to dealing with your doctor wanting to put you on medication. We didn't even get into the shadiness, but essentially the statin studies are the same. Statins reduce your risk of heart disease. They'll tell you they played that same numbers game by 36%, is what the advertisement, and then in some of the advertisements you see in the fine print that is only a 1% difference. So 1 out of 100 are prevented, and I did have this bookmarked, but I think I fucked it up. 1 out of 100 are prevented from having one more heart attack. Meanwhile, the side effects of that statin cause a 5% to 6% to 8% increase in diabetes and several other negative health responses. So it harms you more than it helps you. But don't just take my word for it. Watch that video all the way through. Look at the studies he's citing. Read his papers. You know, if there is any scientist I think that is out there, or researcher or academic that I think is doing good work, he is definitely on my list of people that are fighting the good fight for our health and not the pharmaceutical industry's fucking wallet. But what the fuck do I know? Because I'm not an expert. I'm just a fucking asshole. Please like and subscribe for more motherfucking shit, and I'll make more motherfucking shit. If you found this video enlightening, or if I just saved your life, or if, you know, you find this stuff and it gets your health going, or you're just entertained, or maybe you hate my guts and you hate everything I stand for, and you're saying, you can still keep me making videos by heading to ScottTheTruckDriver.com and leaving a tip in the virtual fucking tip jar. There is also a weekly podcast 3 times a month, because I do a free one here on YouTube now, because everybody wants me to. You can listen to my previous podcasts, also purchase for $5 a download on ScottTheTruckDriver.com. That helps keep me going. That helps keep me doing this research. That helps keeping me sharing this information with you and showing you where to go to find this shit out. And, you know, I can only give you so much information. Ultimately, you should still get out there and learn as much as you can on your own. And I do get the idea, based on the comments that I get, that most of you are doing that, and that makes me fucking happy. So have a nice motherfucking day. And shit.